Hello, my name is Ajibola Oladiipo, and it's such a privilege and honor to have you back on another amazing edition episode of. It's actually an honor to have you on another episode of the Diary of a Patriot, where I get to have deep dives and conversations on issues that has to do with public sector innovation, public policies in Nigeria, and particularly more from my lens. Today, we will actually be having conversations surrounding bureaucracies. And to start with, I would ask you: have you ever been in a situation where you probably entered into a government office, you entered into a government office, civil service and all of that, or you went to a ministry and you actually needed a service, and instead of getting that service, you were shown premium shege. The essence of this video is to see why that shege should not exist, and what we have as checks and balance to ensure that we have a functional bureaucratic system. So, what exactly are bureaucracies? You would probably want to see bureaucracies as an administrative organization that is designed to help implement government policies. So, when you think of Nigeria, what organ in our public sector do you think functions as an administrative organization that helps to implement government policies? You think of the civil service. And to be very honest, bureaucracy is probably like a finer and social way to say civil service or public service. So, and the primary reason why they exist is to ensure efficiency. Yes, not for you to see shege. To ensure efficiency, consistency, and accountability in government. Again, efficiency, consistency, and accountability. Consistency in the sense that irrespective of whichever government is in power, or whatever political party, or whatever the program it is that party has for the nation or that specific state, there's consistency in ensuring that there's continuity. And then they help also ensure that there is actually accountability. That's the whole essence. So the civil service is expected to function without public interference. Personally, I am of the opinion that civil servants shouldn't participate in politics or shouldn't belong to political party. They shouldn't be partisan, because if you're partisan and it's a different party that's in power, you are likely to want to compromise, or what's it called? You're likely to compromise, or you are likely to compromise. So bureaucracies in itself is to ensure that we have functionality and accountability, and then elected officials themselves are not overly drunk with power, and then so that there's actually efficiency. We don't go all about talking politics and people suffer it. Anyways, so in a bid to ensure that bureaucracy's excesses are also checked, we have legislative oversight. That means that as a bureaucracy, you cannot just spend anyhow you want. You create your budget. It has to go through, when the presidency or the governors, when they present their budgets, they have inputs from ministries and departments of government. So those agencies of government are like arms and extensions of bureaucracy. So their budgets has legislative oversight. Also, there are so many things that they probably have to do or that require legislative approval. That's to ensure that there is check and balance. In some cases, whenever some actions are taken, or particularly when you have complaints about excessiveness, you have committee investigation, of course, and this also extends to reviewing policy implementation. So in the course of evaluating the implementation of a policy, if you are realizing that, oh, there is actually an overlap, or this is not functioning the way we so desire that it functions, then the legislative oversight has to kick in just to ensure that there is a check. Why is it the legislative oversight? Because bureaucracy in itself functions under the executive arm of government. So the executive arm of government has direct control, so to speak, or they work hand in hand with the executive arm of government. So the legislature ensures that there is check and balance. When you have very, very strong personalities in public service, or people that are actually efficient and meticulous. Nigeria has been privileged to have people like that. Top of my head, I can think of Oladiipo, I can think of Udoka. Those are people that have expended their lives. They spent their lives actually serving Nigeria and creating a path for bureaucratic processes and ensuring that administration is effective. So that in itself gives us insight into why it's important to have checks and balance. So when the influence of bureaucracy or civil service tends to expand, it can sometimes give them it can sometimes give them a whole lot of control or power, even more than those that were elected. For instance, in any ministry, for instance, the permanent secretary is the accounting officer, which means that to a very large extent he is responsible for what happens in his ministry. That's a lot of power. So imagine if much of those powers if they go unchecked, and that in itself we now create many of the problems that we tend to have: issues of corruption, issue of inefficiency, and excessive regulatory orders. Also, it's very important that there's a balance, in as much as we're trying to ensure that we run an efficient system. We must not, in the course of creating regulations as a result of policies, now make it almost impossible or unbearable for people to live in the country, or to engage with government. Or, for instance, the ease of doing business. The whole essence of ease of doing business is to ensure that it's easy to actually do business. We got to a point in the country that there are so many bottlenecks that we're now trying to see how we can simplify things and ensure that it's easy to do business. Those were created by bureaucracies. Those orders were created by bureaucracies. So how can we simplify them? So the more powerful the civil service becomes, the more difficult it is to bring them to account or to make them accountable. And that's why it's very important that we have structures in place that promotes accountability and ensure that there are checks and balance. So legislative oversight is very, very important in bureaucracy. Yeah, it's very good that we have effective and effectual hand that ensures that we have efficiency. But more importantly, we must also see to the fact that this is also checked, and we don't end up having too many excessive orders. Yeah, that's a very good recap. Unchecked bureaucratic powers can actually be dangerous. So dangerous that the key to it is balance. Make them efficient, effective, and accountable. That's the crux of this message. The civil service is so powerful, so much that they have the power to shape policies of governments, and also influence how the implementation of such policies are done. They administer these policies, so to speak. So the success and the failure of a policy rises and falls on the civil service, on its bureaucratic processes. So that's why it's important to ensure that we have a culture that promotes accountability. We have very formidable structures in place that will ensure that we are open to innovation and reform. And then, the old, is civil service, we're not going to bend, or, you don't want to cross with them, is not the case. So yeah, there's actually room for judicial reviews as well. So when there is sort of like a logjam, and then we probably are not sure what the interpretation of the law in itself says concerning those things. Yes, we can actually approach what's it called? We can actually approach the Supreme Court, which is actually like a court of policy, to actually give an interpretation or review a decision, an executive decision, so that we can actually understand how that in itself can be interpreted, and what's it called? Can be interpreted in future occurrences, in future occurrence. So with tech and open governance, accountability can actually be easier in civil service. Yes, I know that we try to talk about how that civil servants try to shy away from innovation and all of that, but there's actually a way we can embed. There's no how we wouldn't have to embed tech and open governance into ensuring, embed it into our mechanism of accountability to ensure a more productive system. And of course, it's very important that we have our watchdogs, not just on our. When I say watchdogs, I'm talking about the FCC and ICPC. We shouldn't have them just watching our politicians as well. They should actually watch anyone in public service, including civil servants, because we hear interesting cases of people, having like hundreds of houses. Like, we know what the salary structure is. We know what's according to regulation, the kind of business you're permitted to do outside of agriculture. As a civil servant, I don't think you're permitted to do any other kind of business. So how do you explain having a estate to like 100 houses and sort of? So we need to also like beam the searchlight on these people as well, so that they can also be brought to account. Yes, everyone needs to be accountable for us to have an efficient Nigeria. And bureaucracy, the civil service, also needs that searchlight. Bureaucracy simplified in Nigeria is primarily the Nigerian civil service. The Nigerian civil service in action, administering policies, shaping policies, implementing them, administering them, in a bit to ensure that the lives of everyone is better. So I hope you learned something today, and I hope to see you next time. But before then, please do ensure to share this video with someone you care about or someone you think would find this educative enough. And please subscribe to this channel. Let me know in the comment section what you think, your thoughts on this, or whatever shege you've probably seen in any any ministry, department, or agency of government. I would really love to read, and I definitely will respond. I'll see you some other time. Bye.